to the next section of Language Conventions. This section will focus on Educator foundations. There are many ways to describe a sentence. This is one. A sentence is a collection of words that come together to express a complete thought. To increase the specificity of this definition, we might add that every sentence must have a who or a what, and a does or is what, a who and a do, a noun and a verb, or a subject and a predicate. In this video, we will look at a variety of sentence types that students might use in their writing. A central idea in the B3 Continuum is that students will be able to use structures in their oral language that are more complex than they would use in their writing. Students should be exposed to these structures orally, well before they use them in their writing. That is why the B3 Continuum allows for an introduction to sentence structures in one grade, then a consolidation and refinement over many other grades. It is important to use a gradual release model and to explicitly teach concepts starting with simple sentences and gradually increasing the complexity. After students have had many opportunities to talk about sentences in general, to think about them from a who and a do framework, we can begin to introduce the four basic kinds of sentences, again, from the perspective of their function. Declarative sentences are ones that make a statement that states a fact or an opinion. Imperative sentences make a request or give a command or direction. Interrogative sentences ask a question, and exclamatory sentences express a strong emotion or feeling and end in an exclamation mark. It is important to notice that the imperative sentence is a little different than the others. Can you spot the difference? In an imperative sentence, the subject, the who, is implied but never stated. In an imperative sentence, the subject is the person that is being spoken to, or the reader themselves. These sentences are most often found in recipes and procedural texts, or during conversations or dialogue in narrative texts. Be on the lookout for them and help students to recognize them in these contexts. These four simple sentence types are a great way to begin introducing basic punctuation. A compound sentence is made up of two or more independent clauses joined by a coordinating conjunction. In this example, the two independent clauses are Cherie sings in a band, sometimes she plays drums. Each clause is a complete idea with a subject and a verb, a who and a do. The subject, the who, in the first clause is Cherise, and the verb, the do, is sings. In the second clause, the subject is she, and the verb is plays. The coordinating conjunction in this sentence is and. This is one of the most commonly used coordinating conjunctions. Coordinating conjunctions join two words, phrases, or clauses that are of equal value. By introducing students to the other conjunctions, represented frequently by the mnemonic device known as fanboys, educators can teach students how to combine clauses in a variety of ways. Consider nor, but, and yet, three conjunctions that signal a change in direction of the ideas, whereas the conjunction so signals a cause and effect relationship between ideas. Let's examine this text. Can you find a compound sentence made up of two simple sentences? Here's a hint. Look for a coordinating conjunction. There it is. In this compound sentence, the conjunction so implies a cause and effect relationship between the related ideas of plants requiring sunlight and plants not being able to grow deep inside a cave. Another kind of sentence is the complex sentence. These sentences are made up of one independent clause and one or more dependent clauses. These clauses are most often joined by subordinating conjunctions like the ones listed in the box. Subordinating conjunctions are words that signal a relationship between an independent clause and a dependent clause. The dependent clause often begins with the subordinating conjunction, indicating its role in supporting the main clause. Let's examine this complex sentence. This sentence begins with a subordinating conjunction, while. which we already learned is how dependent clauses often start. So we can now identify the dependent clause. While Amr is a big fan of soccer, we know that it has a subject and there is a verb, but it does not express a complete thought. The conjunction while implies that something else is coming, something that will contrast the first statement. That something else is, he prefers cricket, the independent clause. He prefers cricket can stand alone. It has a subject, he, and a verb, prefers, and it expresses a complete thought on its own. It is the independent clause. So the presence of both an independent and a dependent clause make this a complex sentence. This is where things get a little tricky. A compound complex sentence is a sentence made up of two or more independent clauses and one or more dependent clauses. Before we go on, can you remember what kind of conjunction joins two independent clauses? What kind of conjunction joins an independent and a dependent clause? If you answered coordinating and then subordinating, you would be correct. Let's examine. One way educators can introduce sentences is through texts being read aloud or through shared reading. In this text about exploring caves, educators might pull out this sentence as an example of a sentence that combines many propositions or ideas. The first independent clause is, mosses and ferns often grow in rich, wet soil found near cave entrances. It is a compound subject, mosses and ferns, and a verb, grow, and it expresses a complete thought. The second independent clause, they do not find any plant life, again has a subject, they, and a verb, do not find, and it expresses a complete thought. The dependent clause, as cavers move into a cave, begins with a subordinating conjunction as. It has a subject, cavers, and a verb, move, but it does not express a complete idea on its own. It leaves the reader wondering what happens as cavers move into a cave. But when combined with the second independent clause, the idea is completed. These two together make a complex sentence. As cavers move into a cave, they do not find any plant life. Together, the simple independent clause and the complex sentence are then joined by a coordinating conjunction but to form a complex compound sentence. You can see that simply labeling the parts becomes a very confusing task. We did this so that as educators, we can understand the kind of structure we might expect students to be able to create in their writing. We need to be familiar with what is happening and how the parts work together. But for students, a more appropriate sequence of examining the sentence might look very different. First, we might ask, who or what is this part about? Students might easily identify that it is about mosses and ferns. We could then follow up with a question like, which word tells us the action? What mosses and ferns do? That's right, they grow. Instead of always having students identify the words in the sentence, we might change up our questioning and ask them to identify the functional question that is being answered. For example, what does in rich, wet soil near cave entrances tell us in this sentence? What functional question does that answer? That's right, it tells us where the mosses and ferns grow. We might continue in this manner, demonstrating the unique functions of different parts of the sentence. We might focus on the conjunction but and how it signals an opposing idea coming up. We might again focus on the who and the do of the second part of the sentence, cavers and moving. Or we might focus in on the use of the pronoun they and the role that it plays in the sentence by asking, who is they referring to? We might discuss the difference between a complete idea that can stand alone and compare it to one that cannot stand alone, like as cavers move into a cave. Finally, we might go back to the meaning of the sentence as a whole and try to uncover what the opposing ideas were by asking, how is this second clause opposing the first clause in the sentence? By repeatedly focusing on and asking functional questions, students will begin to understand what it takes to create these complex structures, and they will deepen their understanding of the text they are examining. That takes us to the end of our exploration of the different sentence types. This sentence diagram reminds us of all of the components, but most importantly, what role each of the components serves in a sentence. When we encourage students to think about the function or ask students to expand their sentences by asking functional questions like who or what, which one, when talking about subjects, or by asking functional questions like did what, where, when, and why about the predicate, we are asking them to add details and specificity to their ideas and not complicating the matter with whether they can recall what an adverb is or what it is meant to describe. Let's finish this video by taking a look at this sentence diagram. We can break it down to a subject, the who, the whole class, and the predicate, did what, went to the beach after the exam finished. The subject can be further broken down into an article, the, and an adjective, whole, which tells us more about the noun, which class, the whole class. Altogether, the article, the adjective, the noun, the whole class make up the complete subject. The predicate is expanded by answering two different questions. The first question is, where did they go? To the beach answers that question. To the beach is an adverbial phrase, a group of words that tells more about the action. And the second question is when. After the exam finished is an adverbial clause. The amazing thing about sentences, words, phrases, and clauses is that the same ideas can be expressed in different ways. Once students are comfortable with where and when phrases, they can experiment with moving these syntactic structures around within the sentence. For example, the when clause can be rearranged in the sentence to create a new sentence. After the exam finished, the whole class went to the beach. When students are given opportunities to build, create, and modify sentences, they increase their syntactic awareness, and this allows them to not only write better sentences, but untangle complex sentences in their reading. Thank you to the staff and leadership team of the Waterloo Region District School Board for sharing their learning and resources for the development of this learning module. And thank you for engaging with this module. We hope you feel like you know a little bit more and feel more comfortable with the concepts around grammar and syntax and the different types of sentences.